The wreckage burned across 300 meters of canyon floor, black smoke twisting into the pale green sky. Owen dragged himself from beneath a twisted panel of hull plating, tasting copper and ash. His ribs screamed with every breath, but nothing felt broken. Lucky! Incredibly lucky, considering his cargo hauler had just turned into scrap metal at terminal velocity. He stood on shaking legs, surveying the destruction. The ship had torn itself apart on impact, scattering containers and debris across the rocky landscape. Emergency foam had deployed in the cockpit, probably the only reason he was still breathing. The canyon walls rose high on either side, redstone streaked with mineral deposits that caught the light of the system's distant star. Owen checked his suit's readout. Atmosphere was breathable, gravity slightly lower than Earth's standard, temperature comfortable but dropping fast. The small moon had registered as uninhabited on his navigation charts. He remembered the engine failure, the desperate attempt to find somewhere flat to land, then nothing but fire and noise and darkness. His emergency pack had survived, strapped to the pilot's chair. Owen pulled it free and took inventory. 2 weeks of ration bars, a medical kit, water purification tablets, a multi-tool, thermal blanket, and a communicator that flickered weakly when he pressed the activation stud. The screen cracked, showing corrupted data before going dark. He tried again. Nothing to no rescue signal. No way to call for help. The shipping lanes he'd been traveling were commercial routes, but sparse. It could be weeks before another hauler passed close enough to detect wreckage. Owen started searching through the debris field, looking for anything useful. He found emergency flares, a damaged toolkit, lengths of cable, and several intact containers from his cargo hold. The labels indicated construction materials, industrial bonding agents, things meant for a colony world he'd never reach now that a sound stopped him cold. Deep, rumbling, not quite a growl, but close enough to spike his adrenaline. Owen turned slowly, hand moving to the small plasma cutter on his belt. Not much of a weapon, but better than nothing. The creature emerged from behind a boulder the size of a ground transport. Massive didn't begin to describe it. Easily 3 meters tall, built like a gorilla, but wrong in ways that hurt to process. For arms, each corded with muscle under thick silver-black fur. A broad chest that looked capable of stopping bullets. The face was oddly expressive, with amber eyes that tracked Owen's every movement with unmistakable intelligence. They stared at each other across 10 meters of rocky ground. The beast made a sound, softer this time, almost questioning. It shifted, and Owen saw the problem. One of its lower arms was pinned beneath a section of hull plating, the metal edge cutting deep into fur and flesh. Dark blood stained the rocks beneath it. Every survival instinct Owen possessed screamed at him to run. Find shelter, hide, wait for rescue that might never come. This thing could tear him apart without effort, but those eyes, they held pain, yes, but also awareness. Understanding. The creature wasn't trying to threaten him. It was trapped, suffering, and somehow asking for help without words. Owen made a decision that defied logic. He approached slowly, hands visible, making soft nonsense sounds he hoped conveyed peaceful intent. The beast watched him come, muscles tensing but not attacking. Up close, it was even more impressive. The fur looked dense enough to turn a blade, and each hand bore thick claws designed for climbing or fighting. Owen examined the trapped arm. The plating had crushed down during the crash, wedging against the canyon floor. He'd need leverage to lift it, something the creature couldn't manage alone. With its odd angle, he returned to the debris field and found a hydraulic jack from the ship's maintenance kit. Not designed for this kind of work, but it might do. The beast made a curious sound as Owen positioned the jack, understanding flickering in those amber eyes that IT took 20 minutes of careful work. The hydraulic jack groaned under the strain, but slowly, painfully, the plating lifted. The creature pulled its arm free the moment there was space, blood flowing more freely now that the pressure was released. Owen backed away quickly, giving it room. The beast stood to its full height, examining its injured limb. Then it looked at Owen, and something passed between them. Recognition, maybe, or gratitude. The sun was setting fast, and the temperature dropped with it. Owen's suit began generating warnings about hypothermia. The beast made a decisive sound and began moving toward the canyon wall. It paused, looked back at Owen, and made a gesture that needed no translation. Follow. Every rational part of Owen's mind said no. But the cold was already seeping through his suit, and night on this moon promised to be lethal without shelter. The creature had let him help it. It hadn't attacked when it easily could have. Owen grabbed his emergency pack and followed the massive alien into the growing darkness. The beast led him to a cave entrance he'd never have spotted on his own, hidden behind an outcropping of rock. Inside, the temperature immediately felt warmer, protected from the wind that had begun howling through the canyon. The creature settled against one wall, cradling its injured arm. Owen found a spot on the opposite side, far enough to feel safe, close enough to share the shelter. He pulled out his thermal blanket and activated its heating elements. Outside, the first electrical storm began to rage, lightning turning the sky purple and white. Thunder shook the canyon walls. Owen watched the beast watching him, two survivors of the same disaster, neither quite sure what came next. But for tonight, they were alive and sheltered. Tomorrow would bring new problems. Tonight, that was enough. Owen closed his eyes and listened to the storm, aware of the steady breathing from across the cave, no longer certain who had saved whom. Dawn light filtered through the cave entrance, turning everything soft purple and gold. Owen woke to find something placed carefully beside his thermal blanket. 3 round fruits, deep blue with a texture like velvet, and a cluster of mushrooms that glowed faintly in the dim light. The beast sat near the entrance, watching him with those intelligent amber eyes. Its injured arm was wrapped in what looked like moss and broad leaves, a makeshift bandage that showed remarkable problem-solving for a creature that shouldn't know medicine. Owen picked up one of the fruits cautiously. The beast made an encouraging sound and mimed eating. Owen took a small bite, ready to spit it out if needed. Sweet juice flooded his mouth, tasting like a cross between mango and something citrus. His stomach growled, reminding him that ration bars could only do so much. He ate slowly, aware of the creature watching. When he finished, Owen pulled out his medical kit and pointed at the beast's wrapped arm. It hesitated, then slowly extended the limb toward him up close. Owen could see the wound was deep but clean. The moss bandage had some kind of natural antiseptic property because the flesh around it looked healthier than it should. He applied medical gel from his kit and wrapped it properly with synthetic bandaging. The beast rumbled, a sound that might have been appreciation. Owen needed a name for this thing. Calling it the beast felt wrong now. He looked at the silver-black fur, the solid build, the way it seemed carved from the same stone as the canyon walls. Granite. The name fit. He pointed to himself. Owen, then pointed at the creature. Granite. The beast tilted its head, then touched its broad chest with one of its good hands and made a sound, complex and musical. Owen couldn't hope to reproduce it. He repeated, granite, and pointed again. The creature seemed to understand the concept. It pointed at Owen and made an approximation of his name, close enough to count. Then it pointed to itself and said, granite, the word mangled by a mouth not designed for human speech, but recognizable. They had names now. It was a start. Owen found a smooth patch of dirt near the cave entrance and began drawing with a stick. A simple picture of a shelter for walls and a roof. He pointed outside at the wreckage, then at the drawing, then made building motions with his hands. Granite leaned in close, studying the drawing with intense focus. One massive hand reached out and added to the sketch, drawing what looked like supports and a double-layered roof. The creature understood construction principles. For the next hour, they communicated through drawings and gestures. Owen sketched the debris field and pointed at useful materials. Granite drew the moon's weather patterns in the dirt, showing him how the storms came in cycles every few days. The cave was temporary, a bandage solution. They needed something better. Owen pulled out the cargo manifest he'd salvaged from the wreckage. Most of it was gibberish to Granite, but when Owen showed pictures of the construction gel, the creature's eyes brightened. It made excited sounds and gestured toward the debris field. They spent the morning sorting through wreckage together. Granite's strength was astonishing. The creature lifted hull panels that would have required power equipment, carrying them like they weighed nothing. Owen focused on smaller items, salvaging tools and intact containers. The construction gel was a miracle, designed for quick colony building. It hardened on contact with atmosphere, but remained workable for several minutes after application. Owen had 40 containers of the stuff, each one capable of creating a substantial structure. Granite led him deeper into the canyon while they worked, stopping at a cliff face that looked solid at first glance. But the creature showed Owen a gap, narrow but widening inside. They squeezed through into a massive hollow space, a natural cavity inside the cliff itself. Owen's jaw dropped. The hollow was enormous, big enough for multiple rooms, protected from the elements by meters of stone. A thin shaft of light came from above, natural ventilation, and at the back, water trickled down the wall into a small pool. This was perfect. Granite made a questioning sound, gesturing around the space. Owen nodded enthusiastically, already planning in his head. They could seal the entrance, use the gel to create walls and floors, turn this natural shelter into something permanent. They made 3 trips back to the debris field, hauling materials to their building site. Granite carried the heavy loads while Owen brought tools and supplies. Other creatures watched from the canyon heights, smaller versions of Granite with varying fur colors. They called to each other in complex patterns of sound. Granite answered them, and Owen realized the creature had troop, family somewhere out there. But it stayed with Owen, helping, building, creating something new. On their 4th trip, danger found them that a pack of predators emerged from a side canyon. 6 of them, built low and fast with too many teeth. They saw Owen and Granite separated by 20 meters of open ground. Vulnerable with their arms full of materials, the predators attacked. Granite dropped the hull panels it carried and roared, a sound that shook Owen's bones. The creature charged forward, putting itself between Owen and the threat. Forearms became weapons, striking with brutal efficiency. The predators were fast, but Granite was faster and infinitely stronger. Owen grabbed a metal strut and swung hard at a predator that tried to flank around. The impact jarred his arms, but the creature yelped and backed away. Granite finished the fight quickly, driving the pack away with displays of dominance that left no doubt who controlled this territory. When the dust settled, Granite had new wounds across its chest and shoulders. Owen's hands shook as he treated them with his dwindling medical supplies. The creature had defended him without hesitation, risked itself for a stranger from another world. They sat together afterward, backs against the canyon wall, sharing water and the last of the blue fruits. Owen looked at this massive alien who'd brought him food, showed him shelter, taught him about this moon, and now bled protecting him. Not a beast. A person. Different in every way that showed, but a person nonetheless. Owen pulled out his multi-tool and began sketching plans in a damaged datapad he'd salvaged. Real plans this time, engineered and measured. Granite watched over his shoulder, occasionally pointing at something and making suggestions through gesture. The sun set on their 2nd day together, and Owen realized he hadn't thought about rescue once since waking. He was too busy planning their home. Tomorrow they would start building something that shouldn't be possible. A human and an alien, working together, creating shelter where none existed. Owen smiled. He'd been a cargo hauler his whole life, moving other people's dreams from star to star. Maybe it was time to build his own. The construction gel felt strange in Owen's hands, warm and somehow alive before it met the air. He squeezed it from the container onto the cliff hollow's floor, watching it spread and harden into a smooth surface within minutes. Granite observed closely, then tried it with one massive hand, delighted by how the material responded. They started with the floor, creating a level base throughout the entire hollow. Owen marked sections while Granite did the heavy application work, those 4 arms allowing the creature to cover space at incredible speed. By midday, they had a foundation that would have taken a construction crew days to complete. The walls came next. Owen showed Granite how to build forms from salvage panels, then fill them with gel. The material set hard as steel, but weighed much less. They worked in rhythm now, Owen planning each section while Granite executed with precision that surprised them both. Local stone became their reinforcement. Granite scaled the cliff face like gravity was a suggestion, bringing down rocks that Owen helped shape in place. The creature's spatial awareness was remarkable. It knew instinctively where support was needed, where weight distribution mattered, things Owen had to calculate, but on the third day of construction, they attracted attention. Smaller versions of Granite began appearing on the canyon rim, watching the work with obvious curiosity. Juveniles, Owen guessed, based on their size and playful movements. They called down in high-pitched versions of Granite's rumble, and the big creature called back, pride evident in its tone. One brave youngster climbed down for a closer look. It circled the construction site, touching the gel walls with gentle fingers, clearly fascinated. Granite made encouraging sounds, and soon 3 more descended to investigate. Owen found himself with an audience. The young ones watched everything he did with intense focus, occasionally imitating his movements. When he used a multi-tool to cut a panel, one of them tried the same motion with a sharp rock. When he measured distances with a length of cable, they stretched their arms to compare. They were learning, just like Granite had learned. These creatures had intelligence that most species would overlook because they didn't build cities or use technology. But they understood principles, could extrapolate, could innovate. Owen had an idea that he drew in the dirt again, showing them a simple pulley system. Then he built one using cable and a piece of pipe, demonstrating how it could lift heavy objects with less effort. The youngsters watched, transfixed, then immediately began experimenting with their own versions using vines and branches. Granite made a sound that Owen had learned meant approval. The creature was teaching its young through Owen's presence, showing them new ways to solve old problems. The work continued. They created separate spaces within the hollow, using gel walls to divide the area into rooms. Owen claimed a smaller section for himself, including space for the salvaged hydroponics equipment he planned to set up later. Granite built a larger area, with high ceilings to accommodate its height, but between their spaces, they left an open common area. Shared territory. A statement that this home belonged to both of them equally. On the 5th day, the predators returned. Owen was outside, gathering more materials when he heard Granite's warning roar. The same pack from before, but larger now, with reinforcements. 10 of them, hungry and aggressive, seeing Owen as easy prey. Granite erupted from the construction site, but the predators had learned. They split up, forcing Granite to choose which group to engage. 3 went for Owen while the rest occupied Granite's attention. Owen grabbed a metal strut and set his back against a boulder. The predators circled, testing his defenses. One lunged, and he swung hard, connecting with its shoulder. It yelped and retreated, but the others pressed closer. Then rocks rained from above. The youngsters on the canyon rim were throwing stones, their aim surprisingly accurate. The predators scattered, confused by the assault from multiple directions. Granite used the distraction to charge through, scattering the pack with brutal efficiency. But one predator got through. It came at Owen low and fast, jaws open. Owen brought the strut down hard, but the creature twisted and latched onto his leg. Pain exploded through his calf as teeth found flesh. The Granite's roar shook the canyon. The big creature covered 10 meters in 2 bounds, grabbed the predator with 2 hands, and threw it bodily into the canyon wall. The impact was sickening. The predator didn't get up. The rest of the pack fled. Owen collapsed, blood soaking through his pant leg. Granite was there immediately, making distressed sounds, carefully examining the wound. The bite was deep but clean, missing major arteries through sheer luck. The youngsters climbed down quickly, bringing the glowing moss Granite had used before. Together, they helped treat Owen's injury. The big creature's hands, surprisingly gentle as it applied the moss, and wrapped the wound with strips of synthetic fabric Owen provided. That night, they all slept in the unfinished home. Owen in his space, Granite in the larger room, and the youngsters curled together in the common area. Protected, safe, family in a way that transcended species. Owen lay awake, listening to the soft breathing around him. His leg throbbed, but the pain was distant compared to the warmth in his chest. These creatures had defended him. The youngsters had joined the fight without hesitation, protecting a strange alien who'd appeared barely a week ago. The next morning, Owen woke to find Granite had completed the wall sections they'd planned while Owen slept. The creature had worked through the night, driven by some need to finish, to make this place secure. They spent the day adding details. Owen rigged solar panels from the ship to provide basic power. Granite created a ventilation system using natural air currents and carefully placed openings. They built storage areas, a water collection system, and platforms at different heights to maximize the space. The home took shape around them, something unique in the galaxy. Human engineering married to alien intuition, technology blended with natural materials, two species creating something neither could have managed alone. Owen stood in the common area on the seventh day and looked around. The walls were solid, decorated with Granite's handprints and Owen's tool marks. The floor was level and warm. Light came from both the solar panels and the natural shaft above. Water ran clean into the collection pool. They had shelter, resources, and security. They had built a home in a week that should have taken months. Built it with salvage and determination and friendship that made no logical sense. Granite approached and placed one massive hand on Owen's shoulder. The gesture was careful, aware of the strength difference, but unmistakably affectionate. Owen reached up and patted the huge hand. "We did good," he said softly. Granite rumbled in agreement. Outside, a storm began to build, the sky darkening with familiar purple clouds. Owen and Granite moved to the entrance they'd built, a clever door system that could seal tight against wind and rain. They closed it together and stood inside, listening as the storm hit with full force. Thunder shook the canyon. Lightning turned the world outside into a strobe of violence. Inside, they were warm and dry and safe. The storm raged for 6 hours, the worst Owen had experienced yet. But their home held strong, not a drop of water penetrating, the walls solid as the cliff around them. When it passed and they opened the door, the canyon had changed. New debris scattered, rocks fallen, paths altered by rushing water. But their home stood unchanged. Proof that impossible things happened when different minds worked together. Owen smiled and got back to work. They still had a lot to build. The hydroponics bay had survived the crash better than Owen expected. 3 weeks after building their shelter, he finally got it operational. Green shoots pushed through the growing medium, earth vegetables mixing with samples of local plants Granite had brought. Granite watched the process with endless fascination, gently touching the seedlings with one thick finger. Owen showed the creature how the water circulated, how the lights stimulated growth, how nutrients fed the roots. Within days, Granite was tending the garden independently, understanding the needs of each plant species. They fell into a routine that felt natural despite being completely strange. Granite would leave at dawn to hunt and gather, returning with game and edible plants. Owen maintained their systems, repaired salvaged equipment, and expanded their power grid. They cooked together in the evening, Owen teaching Granite about seasoning and temperature while learning which local foods combined well. The walls of their home began filling with personality. Granite created art, pressing its handprints in various colored clays found throughout the canyon. Four-handed prints in red, blue, green, and yellow, creating patterns that held meaning Owen didn't quite grasp, but found beautiful anyway. Owen added his own marks. He hung family photos salvaged from his personal effects, images of parents and siblings he might never see again. He carved the calendar into one wall, marking each day with a simple line. He wrote notes in the margins, observations about the moon, sketches of local wildlife, thoughts about their construction techniques. The common area became a shared gallery of their lives. Owen's communicator remained stubbornly broken, but he kept trying to repair it. Granite would sit nearby during these sessions, watching Owen work with tools, occasionally handing him the right piece before Owen asked for it. The creature was learning to read his body language, anticipating his needs. One evening, Owen succeeded. The communicator flickered to life, displaying a weak but stable signal. His hand shook as he composed a distress call, keeping it simple and factual. Coordinates, status, requesting retrieval. When possible, he sent it and waited. The signal was weak, might not reach anywhere for weeks or months. Rescue could take years if it came at all. Owen looked around their home, at Granite preparing dinner with ingredients from their garden, at the youngsters playing in the common area, at the walls decorated with their combined creativity. For the first time since the crash, the thought of rescue felt complicated. The garden thrived beyond expectations. Owen's earth vegetables adapted to the local conditions, while Granite's native plants responded well to controlled growing. They had fresh food now, varied and nutritious, supplementing the ration bars that were finally running low. Owen taught Granite to cook human style. The creature proved surprisingly adept, those 4 hands allowing for complex multitasking. Granite would chop vegetables with 2 hands while stirring pots with the others, movements coordinated in ways that made Owen envious. In return, Granite showed Owen how to prepare local game, which cuts to use, which organs were delicacy, and which were best discarded. They created fusion meals, earth spices on alien meat, local vegetables prepared with human techniques. The youngsters became regular visitors, treating Owen's space like a classroom. He showed them mathematics using stones, physics with simple machines, engineering principles through building exercises. They absorbed everything, then ran off to teach others of their kind. Owen realized he was watching cultural evolution in real time. These creatures had always been intelligent, but they'd lacked exposure to certain concepts. Now, armed with new knowledge, they were innovating rapidly. One youngster showed up with a primitive hammer, stone fixed to wood with vines in a design that showed clear understanding of leverage. Another had created a simple loom, weaving plant fibers into rough fabric. They were taking what Owen showed them and making it their own. Granite made sounds at night, musical calls that echoed through the canyon. At first, Owen thought it was communication with the troop, but over time, he realized it was more than that. Granite was telling stories. The creature's calls varied in pitch and rhythm, creating complex patterns that other members of its species would answer. Owen listened one night, really listened, and understood. Granite was telling their story. The crash, the meeting, the building, the home. The calls formed a narrative, passed from one group to another across the canyon system. They were becoming legend among Granite's people. The strange alien and the local who built something new together. More of Granite's species began visiting, drawn by the stories. They examined the home with careful respect, touching the walls, studying the construction. Some brought gifts, colorful stones, or rare plants, or beautifully carved wood. Owen accepted everything, displaying the gifts prominently in the common area. The home became a meeting place. Different family groups would stop by, sharing news and food. Owen found himself hosting gatherings, passing around plates of cooked food, while Granite communicated with the visitors in that complex musical language. He was becoming part of their community. An outsider, yes, but an accepted one, valued not for being like them, but for being different in useful ways. 3 months after the crash, Owen's calendar wall was full of marks. He started a new section, but the act felt different now. He wasn't counting days until rescue anymore. He was marking time in a life that had meaning, tracking the growth of the garden, noting when youngsters learned new skills, recording the changing seasons of this strange moon. Granite brought him to a hidden valley one day, a trek of several hours through narrow canyon passages. They emerged into a space that took Owen's breath away. Dozens of Granite's species lived there, family groups clustered around natural shelters. They looked up as Owen entered, curious but not afraid. Youngsters ran forward immediately, recognizing Owen from visits to the home. They pulled him toward their families, eager to show him off. Owen met mothers with infants, elders with silver fur, hunters with scars from old battles. Each one greeted him with sounds that might have been names, accepting his presence with remarkable trust. That Granite's chest swelled with pride, showing Owen the life its people had built here. Simple but complete, working with nature rather than against it, community over individual, survival through cooperation. Owen understood. Granite had family here, roots that ran deep. But the creature had chosen to stay with Owen to help build something new, to bridge the gap between species. That choice meant something. Everything, really. They returned home as the sun set, the valley behind them but not forgotten. Owen prepared dinner while Granite tended the garden. The youngsters arrived as always, bringing news and questions and endless energy. Owen served food on salvaged plates, a fusion meal of earth and alien, technique and tradition merged into something neither culture had produced before. They ate together in the common area, surrounded by handprints and photos and tools, the detritus of two species learning to share space. Later, alone in his section of the home, Owen looked at the photo of his family. He missed them, would always miss them. But the ache had changed. It wasn't the desperate loneliness of being stranded anymore, but he had a home now. Different than the one he'd left, but real and solid and full of life. Granite rumbled from the common area, a questioning sound. Owen smiled and called back, a simple affirmation that yes, he was all right, just thinking. The big creature appeared in the doorway, carrying 2 cups of the tea Owen had taught it to make from local herbs. It handed one over and settled against the wall, comfortable in the silence. They sat together, drinking tea, watching the stars through the ventilation shaft above. No words needed, just presence and partnership and home. Outside, the canyon settled into night. Inside, 2 beings from different worlds rested in the shelter they'd built together, and it was enough. The ship appeared 4 months after the crash, a sleek survey vessel that descended into the canyon with precision that made Owen's cargo hauler look primitive. He and Granite stood at the entrance of their home, watching the craft settle onto the rocky floor with barely a whisper of engines. Owen's hand found Granite's lower arm, steadying himself. The creature rumbled softly, sensing his tension. The survey ship's hatch opened, and 4 beings emerged. None human, a tall insectoid with translucent wings, a stocky reptilian covered in blue scales, something that looked like mobile coral, and a small furry creature with too many eyes. They wore matching uniforms marked with symbols Owen recognized as belonging to the Galactic Survey Corps. The insectoid approached first, its translator device chirping to life. We received a distress signal from this location. Are you Owen, the human cargo pilot? I am. Owen's voice sounded strange after months of communicating primarily through gestures and simple words. The insectoid's compound eyes fixed on him, then shifted to Granite. The big creature had moved slightly forward, protective. You survived. Excellent. We were prepared to retrieve remains. I had help. Owen gestured to Granite. The reptilian team members stepped forward, scanner in hand. Indigenous fauna. Large predator classification. You've managed to avoid being eaten for 4 months. Impressive. Granite isn't a predator. Well, not to me. We're partners. The coral being made bubbling sounds that the translator rendered as laughter. Partners with a local animal. The isolation has affected your judgment. We should get you to medical immediately. Granite's rumble turned aggressive. Owen felt the tension in the creature's arm, saw the way its other hands flexed. Granite understands what you're saying. The translator works both ways, and this species is more intelligent than you're giving them credit for. The small, furry creature, who'd been silent until now, spoke in surprisingly clear tones. The structure behind you, that wasn't here before. The materials are from your crashed vessel. We built it together. Owen turned, gesturing to their home with pride he couldn't suppress. Granite showed me the location, helped with construction, taught me about local resources. We've created a sustainable living situation. The insectoid moved closer to the entrance, examining the construction with professional interest. Impressive engineering. The blend of salvaged materials and native stone shouldn't work this well, but it does. Who designed this? Both of us. I provided technical knowledge. Granite provided spatial awareness and strength. It was collaborative. The reptilian's scanner beeped. The indigenous creature shows signs of tool use and complex problem solving. This contradicts our initial survey data of this moon. Your initial survey was wrong. Owen kept his voice level. Granite's people are intelligent, capable of learning and innovation. They just don't build cities or use technology in ways you'd recognize. The team spent an hour examining the home, their scientific curiosity overriding their rush to extract Owen. They documented everything, scanned the construction gel applications, analyzed the hybrid systems Owen had created. Granite watched them with wary eyes, but allowed the inspection. The insectoid captain, whose name translated as clicks twice, seemed particularly fascinated by the garden. You've successfully cultivated both Earth and native species in controlled conditions. The data alone is worth publishing. The small furry one, called Pip, examined Granite's artwork. These patterns show cultural expression and abstract thinking. This species needs reclassification. Then the reptilian, whose name Owen couldn't pronounce, made a suggestion that froze Owen's blood. We should bring a specimen back for proper study. The scientific value would be immense. Granite tensed. Owen stepped between them, anger flaring hot. No, absolutely not. Granite isn't a specimen. This is family. Family. Clicks twice, tilted its head. You've been isolated for months. Your attachment is understandable, but not rational. I'm completely rational. Granite saved my life multiple times, taught me how to survive here, defended me from predators, built a home with me. That creature is more family than some blood relatives I've had. The team exchanged looks, the kind that said they thought Owen had lost his mind. Pip spoke gently. Owen, we're here to rescue you. You've survived an incredible ordeal, but you don't have to stay here. We can take you to the nearest station, get you medical care, contact your family. Owen looked back at the home, at Granite, standing tall and proud despite the fear Owen could sense. He thought about the youngsters who'd learned mathematics and engineering, the elders who'd shared wisdom about the moon's patterns, the community that had accepted him. I need to think about this. Can you give me time? Clicks twice made a sound of surprise. Think about rescue? Most beings would be running for the ship. I'm not most beings. Owen met the captain's compound gaze. You've offered me a ride. I appreciate that. But this isn't just about leaving anymore. This is about what I'd be leaving behind. The coral beings spoke up. We can offer an alternative. The Survey Corps is establishing this moon as a protected research zone based on what we've found here. We need someone familiar with the local conditions and inhabitants. Someone who can act as liaison between the indigenous population and visiting scientists. Owen's heart skipped. A liaison position? It would mean staying here, at least partially. We'd provide supplies, proper communication equipment, emergency support. Your distress beacon brought us here, but your integration with the local species is the real discovery. Granite made a questioning sound. Owen turned and found the creature watching him with those amber eyes, intelligence and emotion clear in its expression. The question was obvious. What do you choose? He needed to show Granite something first. He gestured for the creature to follow and led everyone deeper into the canyon, toward the hidden valley. The survey team followed, scanners active, documenting everything. The valley spread before them, Granite's people going about their lives. Youngsters played with primitive tools, clearly incorporating things they'd learned from Owen. Adults built improved shelters using techniques adapted from observing the home construction. Elders gathered around a communal area where stories were being told through those musical calls. Owen watched the survey team's reactions shift from curiosity to awe. This wasn't a simple animal population. This was a culture in development, a species on the edge of technological advancement, held back only by lack of exposure to certain concepts. Clicks twice turned to Owen with respect in its posture. You've been teaching them. They've been teaching me too. That's how it works when you actually communicate instead of just observing. Granite called out, and several of the youngsters ran over. They showed the survey team their tools, their woven fabrics, their simple machines. Each innovation was rough, but functional, proof of minds that could learn and adapt and create. Pip spoke softly. If we'd done our job properly during the initial survey, we would have recognized this. We failed them. You can make up for it now. Owen faced the team. Give them protection. Make this moon off limits to exploitation. Let them develop at their own pace without outside interference. And you want to stay and facilitate that? The reptilian sounded skeptical but interested. Owen looked at Granite, at the youngsters at the valley full of potential. He thought about his cargo hauler job, flying the same routes year after year, moving other people's goods without purpose beyond the paycheck. Then he thought about teaching eager minds, about building things that mattered, about the home waiting back in the canyon, about partnership with someone who'd become the most important person in his life despite every difference between them. The choice wasn't really a choice at all. Yes, Owen said firmly. I want to stay. This is home now. Granite's rumble was pure joy. The creature placed all four hands on Owen's shoulders, a gesture they developed for important moments. Understanding passed between them, confirmation of the bond they built over 4 months of survival and construction and shared meals. Clicks twice made an approving sound. Then we'll set up the liaison arrangement. You'll have supplies, equipment, and regular check-ins. We'll document this moon properly and establish protections for the indigenous population. The coral being added, and we'll send proper medical supplies. That leg wound you're favoring needs better treatment than moss and hope. Owen laughed, the sound surprising him. When had he last laughed? Deal. But the moss works pretty well, actually. They returned to the home as the sun began to set. The survey team would stay overnight, document more data, then return to file their reports. Owen would stay behind with better equipment and official standing. That night, Owen sat in the common area with Granite and the youngsters, the survey team resting in their ship. He looked at the walls covered in handprints and photos, at the garden growing strong, at the tools and materials that represented months of work. Granite rumbled a question. Owen smiled and answered in the mixture of words and gestures they developed. Yes, I am staying. This is where I belong. The big creature leaned against him, careful of its strength, expressing affection in that direct way Owen had grown to love. Outside, stars wheeled overhead. Inside, Owen was surrounded by family he'd chosen and who'd chosen him back. Tomorrow the survey team would leave, and his new life would truly begin. Tonight, he was home. 2 years changed everything and nothing at all. Owen stood on the lookout platform they'd built onto the cliff face, watching a small research shuttle descend into the canyon. The third one this month. Word had spread through galactic academic circles about the protected moon and its developing indigenous culture. Granite climbed up beside him, moving with the same powerful grace that had first terrified Owen. The creature's fur had silvered more around the muzzle, and a scar across one shoulder told the story of a rock slide last winter. Owen had a matching scar on his leg from the same incident, when they'd worked together to rescue a youngster trapped in a collapse. More visitors, Owen said, the word accompanied by hand gestures that had become second nature. Granite rumbled agreement, then made the sign they developed for curious ones. The big creature didn't mind the researchers anymore, as long as they respected boundaries. Some had even earned Granite's trust, learning the musical language, participating in community gatherings. The home had expanded far beyond the original hollow. Additional structures dotted the canyon now, built using the same hybrid techniques Owen and Granite had pioneered. A proper research station occupied one section, with labs and accommodation for visiting scientists. Granite's people had built their own versions nearby, incorporating gel construction with traditional methods. But the original home remained the heart of it all. Owen and Granite still lived there, in the spaces they claimed that first week. The common area had grown, though, extending outward to accommodate the regular gatherings that had become tradition. Owen headed down to greet the shuttle. Granite followed, comfortable now with the routine of welcoming new arrivals. The hatch opened and 3 researchers emerged, led by a human woman about Owen's age. Dr. Rebecca Foster, she said, extending a hand. Xenolinguistics specialist. I've been studying the recordings of Granite's language family for 6 months. Being here in person is incredible. Owen shook her hand, still finding it strange to interact with other humans after so long. Owen, liaison and general builder of impossible things. Rebecca laughed. We read your reports. The Cultural Exchange Council is fascinated by what you've accomplished here. Her team consisted of a Deltan mathematician and a trill biologist, both eager to begin their research. Owen showed them to the research station, pointing out the protocols established over 2 years of trial and error. Respect the locals. Learn before you assume. Share meals when offered. Never treat anyone as a specimen. Granite led them to the valley that afternoon, introducing them to the community with formal calls that Owen had learned signified honored guests. The youngsters, now adolescents who towered over Owen, showed off their latest innovations. Refined tools, complex woven patterns, a primitive but functional pottery wheel that Rebecca's eyes widened. The cultural advancement in just 2 years is remarkable. They were always capable, Owen said quietly. They just needed exposure to new concepts and the freedom to experiment. That evening, they held a gathering in the expanded common area. Granite's people brought food, researchers contributed supplies from their ship, and Owen cooked his signature fusion meals. The space filled with music, Granite's family singing their stories while Rebecca recorded everything with academic precision. Owen found himself translating, not just words but context, explaining why certain calls meant specific things, what gestures carried weight, how the musical patterns related to their understanding of time and space. He'd become fluent without realizing it, bridging two species through daily interaction. Late that night, after the guests had retired, Owen and Granite sat on their original lookout platform. The stars overhead were familiar now, patterns Owen had learned to read for weather and seasons. They want to expand the research station, Owen said. Bring more permanent staff. Granite made a contemplative sound, then signed a question. Will it change things? Everything changes. The question is whether we guide it or just react to it. The big creature leaned against him, and Owen felt the trust in that gesture. 2 years of partnership had taught them both that change didn't have to mean loss. More ships came in following months. Not just researchers, but engineers curious about their construction techniques. Artists fascinated by Granite's cultural expressions. Educators wanting to document the teaching methods Owen had developed. The settlement grew carefully, each edition debated between Owen, Granite, and the elders of the local community. They built a proper greenhouse, expanding the garden into food production that supported both species. A workshop where traditional crafts could be practiced alongside modern fabrication. A gathering hall large enough for the entire community. Owen discovered other crashed ships over the years, turning salvage into an art form. A water purification system from a science vessel. Solar collection panels from a luxury yacht. A medical scanner from a transport that had gone down decades ago. Each find got incorporated into the settlement, improving their capabilities. But the original home remained special. Owen kept his calendar wall, though he'd stopped counting days toward anything specific. The marks represented moments now. A youngster's first successful weaving. The day Granite taught Owen a complex grammatical structure in a musical language. When they'd successfully grafted an earth fruit tree to local root stock, Granite's artwork covered every available surface, but Owen's photos still held their original place. His family had finally made contact, relieved to learn he was alive. They didn't understand his choice to stay, but they accepted it. His mother's last message had been simple. You sound happy. That's what matters. He was happy. Different than he'd imagined happiness would look, but real and solid and earned through shared effort. Rebecca became a semi-permanent resident, her xenolinguistics research expanding into a full cultural documentation project. She and Owen would sit for hours, comparing notes, debating whether certain behaviors were learned or instinctive, laughing at their own early misconceptions. You realize what you've done here? She asked one evening. You've created the first truly integrated settlement between humans and a pre-technological species. Every xenosociology textbook will have chapters about this place. Owen shrugged. We just built a home. Everything else followed naturally. That's the beauty of it. You didn't approach this as first contact or cultural study. You approached it as two people trying to survive and built something bigger without meaning to. Granite appeared in the doorway, carrying 3 cups of the tea they all favored. The creature had learned to brew it perfectly, understanding each person's preferences through observation and care. They drank together, watching the sun set through the expanded windows Owen had installed last summer. The settlement lights began flickering on, a mix of solar power and carefully managed fires, technology and tradition existing side by side. 10 years after the crash, the settlement had a proper name in both human standard and Granite's musical language. Sanctuary Canyon, a place where two species had learned to build together, creating something neither could have achieved alone. Owen was older now, gray threading through his hair, scars from a decade of construction and exploration marking his skin. Granite moved a bit slower, though still incredibly strong, with wisdom in those amber eyes that came from raising multiple generations of youngsters. They sat on the original lookout platform, a ritual they maintained no matter how busy life became. The canyon below was transformed. Structures dotted the landscape, a blend of architectural styles that represented years of collaboration. Gardens flourished. Workshops hummed with activity. The research station had tripled in size, but their home, the original hollow in the cliff, remained unchanged except for repairs and maintenance. The common area still held the first handprints Granite had made, the first photos Owen had hung. That space was memory and foundation, a reminder of where everything began. "We did good," Owen said softly, the same words he'd spoken after their first storm. Granite rumbled agreement, then added the sign they developed for home. Not the structure, but the concept. The feeling of belonging, of being where you were meant to be, of building something that mattered with someone who mattered. At a group of youngsters ran past, chasing each other with a mixture of traditional games and ones Owen had taught them. Human children played among them now, offspring of researchers who decided to stay, growing up bilingual in ways that made the adults jealous. Rebecca waved from below, heading to a gathering where elders of Granite's people would share oral histories with xenoarchaeologists. Cultural exchange happening naturally, without force or expectation. The sun touched the horizon, painting the canyon in shades of purple and gold. Soon the community would gather for the evening meal, bringing together dozens of species and cultures, all connected by this place that had started as one human's desperate survival and one alien's compassionate help. Owen thought about his old life sometimes. The cargo routes, the stations, the endless flying from place to place without real purpose. He'd been searching for something without knowing it, hauling other people's dreams while having none of his own. Then he'd crashed and found everything he'd been missing. Granite's hand found his shoulder, the gesture familiar and grounding. They'd built a home from wreckage and determination. They'd created a community from curiosity and respect. They'd proven that differences weren't barriers but opportunities for something better. The stars began appearing overhead, constant companions in this life he'd built. Owen smiled, feeling the weight of the big creature beside him, hearing the sounds of the settlement below, breathing the air of a moon that had tried to kill him and instead became home. No shelter had become every shelter. A problem had become a solution. And two beings from completely different worlds had built something that would last long after they were gone. Home wasn't where you came from, but it was what you built with those who mattered, one day at a time, with patience and effort and stubborn refusal to accept that impossible things couldn't happen. Owen and Granite sat together as night fell, watching their world settle into peaceful darkness. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new visitors, new opportunities to build and teach and learn. Tonight, they were home. And that was everything.